How's it going, YouTube friends? So I just have a lot of extra time on my hands, and I figured I would jot down a list of 5 tips for new drivers, spoken from a newer driver myself. Got about 4 years of driving experience for semi-trucks. So just do a little brief history of my how I started out. I worked for a company who had a dock-to-driver program, and I was on the dock for a little over a year before I was eligible to before they would let me, before they would pay for me to go to school, basically. And it was their own proprietary school. It wasn't like they were paying, some awesome company dollars when they had their own resources. They had a very skilled instructor. And I'll tell you what, that was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my 20s. I went to California for about a month and a half, learned down there. Anyways, regardless, so shortly after that, got my CDL, and I was doing what I was doing is I wasn't really driving full time for the company. I was working on the dock as moving freight. So I was a forklift operator, so I have plenty of knowledge and experience as far as LTL freight docks, or at least that one. Busy, it's brutal. You make some good buddies though. The camaraderie you get with that is, I walked away with some really good buddies. But it also, working where I was working, I was fortunate enough to be able to hustle instead of just working the dock and only driving, like doing a spot pick where you run an empty trailer to an account and then pick up the full one and then come back. And that's what I would do, is I would only do like maybe 1 or maybe 2 things in a night. I was only doing 1 thing a day for a decent amount of time. And then a few months went by. And this leads me into my first point, is that I was able to get a lot of experience backing trailers up. And if you're a new driver or you're thinking about it and you have the opportunity to be a hostler and work on a dock, that right there, the knowledge that you get from that and the practice that you get from it is invaluable to a truck driver. And there's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity, and so I'm very grateful for it. And I think that if you ever have the opportunity to hustle before you start driving truck full time, I would definitely suggest that you take that opportunity to do so. So anyways, now most of my driving has been local. I have been working OTR for since February, and it is now July, and I like it. It's great. There are some couple of negatives to it, some things that I'm going through right now where it's won't be home for about 2 weeks, and I run dedicated, so this is very, very unusual. But that's just, it's how the cookie crumbles with this kind of a job. But the next tip, if you don't have the ability to be a hostler and gain that experience, when you're backing up, and say you're alone, and you've only, I don't know how other companies do it with their training programs, but once they cut you loose, if you're alone and you have to back up a trailer, do not be afraid to get out and look more than like once, all right? Because if you make one little mistake, it'll cost you big time. And it goes on your company record. It can go on insurance depending on what you hit. And it's just, your managers might lose confidence in you, and that puts a damage on your career. So when you are at a truck stop and you're trying to back up and it's dark, don't be afraid to just go and get out and look a couple of times. Yes, other drivers find it extremely irritating when you can't back up a trailer to save your life, but that's just how it goes, and they'll get over it. So don't be intimidated by them. The intimidation backing up a trailer was probably one thing that really got under my skin the first 2 years that I was that I've been driving truck. So don't let that intimidation get underneath your skin, or at least the fear will leave eventually, and it comes with practice and it comes with time. Just do not be afraid to get out and look. Okay. My third tip. So if you've been driving for a while, just being on the road, a regular car, four-wheel car, whatever, you develop a almost like a sixth sense of what's going on around you. I would hope that if you are taking up driving semi, that you would consider yourself more vigilant on the road than the average person. I pride myself with that. I am a very vigilant driver. Your head is always on a swivel, especially when you're in a truck, but even when you're in a car, it just makes you that much more of a safer person. But in a semi-truck, your head is always on a swivel, and you need to be able to read what traffic's about to do, and you have to be really looking at yourself about 12 seconds ahead of the game. So that's something that you need to really consider as well. If you have a hard time being a vigilant individual when it comes to driving on the road, try to improve it, because you do need to always be looking way ahead of what's going on. You have to predict what drivers are going to do, even if they don't do it. As long as you imagine that it's extremely likely that that's what they're going to do, it just puts you in a more safer situation, gives you time to either slow down or back off a little bit, or maybe change lanes. So that would be the third tip. Vigilance over the road, head on a swivel all the time, mirrors, looking ahead, looking at on-ramps, watching people trying to swing over 3 lanes just to get to the off-ramp that they need, which happens more often than you'd think. So my fourth thing that I'd like to kind of touch with is when you're a young driver, when you're a green driver, when you're fresh, people are going to want to take advantage of that. It's taken me a long time to build a little hair on my chest to kind of deal with that, and that's something that everybody either has a skill of being able to stand up for yourself, or to say that doesn't work for me. And I've had people who have tried to tell me that say no that you can say no, that there are certain situations where you just have to bite the bullet and get the work done. And I'm not saying that you need to say no to that, but what I am saying is that there are situations where you're getting pressured to do something, or they need somebody. They always need somebody, and you can say no, and they will go on to the next person. But like I said, there are situations where that isn't the case, and you just have to do the job. As a young driver, you will develop that on your own as time goes on. I'm still developing it as my, so that's one thing that you also need to look at while you are, going through your career. And companies, there are people who aren't considerate of other people's lives. And, people are just trying to get a job done, but they're also trying to, they're trying to get their job done. So, just take that for what you will. Last thing I'd like to touch on is knowing your limit, especially being a new driver. When I was just fresh out of driver training and I was going on orientation rides, it was like a 1 or 2 week orientation once I got back to my terminal. And about halfway through the day, and I was in the passenger seat, man, I think I ended up dozing off. And I wasn't driving, but I was tired. It was mentally exhausting. And once I started actually driving for myself, every single day I was mentally exhausted, and then I had to go and work on the dock. So that really just it kind of put into perspective, like, truck drivers have a lot on their plate that they have to deal with daily, mentally, physically. If you're dealing with stuff at home, it makes it that much more. So you need to try and leave your stuff at the door when you show up to work, because you need to save all that energy for the road. It's really exhausting, and you build endurance over time. But also, like, knowing your limits, you need to know when you have to take a break, because if you can't recognize that you need to take a break, that's when accidents happen. You'll doze off, you'll veer off the road, you'll hit somebody, you'll when you're backing up, it just you just need to make sure that when you're on the road, when you're driving, if you need to take a break, pull off to the shoulder, don't pull off on the shoulder, pull off like an off ramp, and then pull off to the shoulder on the off ramp or on the on ramp. Or if you have the opportunity to go to a truck stop or a rest stop, if you have to take another extra half hour to go take a nap, if you have the luxury of having a bunk, don't be afraid. You got to do what you got to do to get the job done, and if that means that you need to rest a little bit so that way you don't hurt yourself or hurt somebody around you that can cost you your job, then that's part of getting the job done, is getting to your destination safely. So don't abuse it either. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to take me a 3-hour nap. No, you do what you need to do. Walk around your trailer, take a nap, whatever wakes you up, you got to do it. So anyways, that's my 5 tips for new semi drivers, or people who are prospecting into the idea of getting behind a big rig or getting behind the wheel. Anyways, I'm gonna see if I can't figure out other 5 tips or whatnot kind of a video. I just compiled a little list. So anyways, if you guys like it, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. If you don't like it, leave a thumbs down. If you're another truck driver who's watching this and you have other tips, leave it in the comments. Obviously, there's a lot more than just what I listed. So, if you have any tips for other, tips out there that you'd like to leave, I encourage you to leave them, even if you don't drive truck. So, anyways, with that said, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.